Hi, everybody. It's Victor King from Playbook. My story is that I'm a database analyst, a writer, and a handicapper for Playbook. And I was hired by Mark way back in the summer of 2000. Over 20 years at Playbook. I'm a very lucky guy. How many people can actually claim that they're working their dream job? You may not see me a lot on the videos. I haven't done too many of those, so please bear with me. I definitely thank Mark and Colleen for giving me a chance over 20 years ago. I'm the over/under guy for Playbook. Over/unders, totals plays. That's my niche. And one of the other things I learned from my mentor, that's Mark, was to find out what makes you passionate about sports gaming and then make that your field of expertise. People call it staying in your lane. And for me, that means taking my love of sports, gambling, math, and writing, and then creating a new playbook publication back in 2005. And that publication was the Playbook NFL Totals Tip Sheet. We're going to take a couple minutes here. We're going to get inside the heads of the over/under bet a little bit, and then we'll talk a little bit about betting overs versus unders. And real quickly here, we want to talk about the fact that the average Joe out there, he loves betting his overs and he hates betting his unders. And that's the case in just about every single sporting event there is out there, whether it's football, basketball, baseball, over/unders, team totals, individual props even. People love betting their overs. They hate betting their unders. It kind of makes sense when you think about it, because when you bet an over in a game, what are you actually rooting for? You get to root for not just one team to do well, but both teams to do well. You get to root for both teams when you're at the game or you're watching the game on TV. Big plays, chunk plays, Hail Marys, great offense, a lot of scoring, a shootout back and forth. Over players love their shootouts. A pick six, a scoop and score, a kickoff return for a touchdown. These are all very, very exciting football plays that the over better absolutely loves. You can't blame people for betting overs and then wanting to enjoy it on TV or there right at the game. But now let's talk about the under better out there. This is a tough thing to talk about in terms of actual human nature. When you are betting an under in a football game, what are you actually rooting for when you watch the game on TV? You're rooting for a field position game. You're rooting for a lot of punts. You're rooting for a conservatively coached game. You're rooting for teams to stall in the red zone so that they kick a field goal instead of a touchdown. These are all things that are very difficult by human nature to actually root for, particularly when you're at the game or you're watching the game on TV. You're rooting for a boring game to occur. And again, that's against human nature. So we can kind of understand a little bit the reasoning why people love betting over so much and why they detest betting unders. But with that said, we're going to tell you, if you're going to profit in this business of over/under handicapping, you got to wager on more unders than overs. For every over you better bet an under, or maybe two unders, or maybe even three unders. Because we all know about the casinos out in Vegas, the sports books, they're all built on the losses of the over the total better. So when you do bet an over in a game, hey, I bet my share of overs as well. You better have the ammunition. You better have it out of your database. You better have it from the series history. You better have the statistics to back up that over, because unders occur a lot more than overs in football. So again, we've got inside your head a little bit. We understand the reasoning, but just remember this. If you're going to profit betting in football, you've got to bet your unders as well. Sometimes I bet an under, and then I don't watch the game on TV. Why put yourself through that 3 hours of anguish that an under better goes through when you're watching the game and you're hoping nothing occurs and you got a little pit in your stomach is all tensed up, or what I call the tightened sphincter, sitting there for 3 hours during a game on an under. So a lot of times when I'm betting an under, I'm not going to watch it on TV. I am going to perhaps check in every quarter or so, but why put yourself through that anguish? When an under better wins his game, he's earned it. Not necessarily the over better, but definitely the under better because he is tense for 3 consecutive hours. That's overs, that's unders. There's also betting smart and there's betting sharp. I'm going to need my glasses for this one. And you got to remember this one when you're betting. Have a predetermined game plan and a money management plan. You got to set aside your bankroll of disposable income and stop betting if that bankroll is depleted. A general rule of thumb for overs and unders is to play your overs a little earlier in the week and play your unders a little bit later in the week. Remember, sharp players, they bet on value in the line. They bet on numbers, situations, and motivations. Square players, they bet on teams or they knee jerk or chase based on last week's results. So there you have it about betting sharp, betting smart. It's imperative that sharp over-under bettors are also aware of the playing surfaces in the NFL. After all, that over better feels a lot more confident, A, in a controlled environment with ideal temperatures and playing conditions, with no wind and no precipitation, and finally a durable, springy, consistent playing surface. There are 16 teams in the NFL that play on grass. There are 16 teams that play on artificial turf. Your grass teams. Arizona, even though they play indoors, plays on a grass field. So does Baltimore, Jacksonville, Kansas City, Las Vegas, also an indoor stadium that plays on grass, Tampa Bay, Tennessee, Washington. Those are the teams that play on the best grass surface that there is, and that's that warm weather Bermuda grass. Then we have 4 teams that play on a Kentucky bluegrass. This is the type of grass, it's a northern weather grass, and it can result in a pretty chopped up field. But those 4 teams who play on Kentucky bluegrass are Chicago, Cleveland, Denver, Pittsburgh. Incidentally, those are 4 of my favorite under teams to bet on, and it's no surprise they play on that choppy Kentucky bluegrass. Green Bay and Philadelphia play on a surface called the Deso Grassmaster, and finally the 49ers play on actually a hybrid of Bermuda grass and perennial ryegrass. Then we have your artificial turf teams, the fast track teams. That would be Buffalo, Carolina, Detroit and New England, Atlanta, New Orleans, Seattle, Dallas, Houston, the Chargers and the Rams, the Colts, Cincinnati, Minnesota, New York Giants, New York Jets. When you're betting your over-unders, make sure you're aware of what kind of actual playing surface that you're talking about. Now, I'm going to run into last year's stats very, very quickly here and do a really, really quick review. Before I do that, we have to understand what happened in 2020. That was the COVID season. That was the season in which games were canceled, games were delayed, there were no fans in the stands. And coincidentally, in that 2020 season, it was the highest scoring season of all time in the NFL. 49.6 combined points per game in 2020. By far the highest scoring season in the NFL. So what happened last year in the 2021 season? 1 year removed from that historic season. Well, NFL scoring actually went down almost 4 points per game last year to 46.0. So they went from 49.6 in 2020 to only 46.0 last year. Now I say only, still, that's a lot of points. It's still a top 5 season in NFL history, but significantly lower than that 2020 season. Now your top over team in the NFL last year, some might think it was maybe the Kansas City Chiefs, maybe the Buffalo Bills, maybe the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, maybe the LA Rams. Those teams would be, or those people would be wrong. The number 1 over team in the NFL last year was actually the Minnesota Vikings at 11-6 over under and only 65% over the total. In a normal given year, you're going to find a team that goes over 67%, 75%. That did not occur last year, as Minnesota was only a 65% over team. And in fact, they were the only team in the NFL last year that went over the total at a higher than 60% percentage, the Minnesota Vikings. And the reason for that is probably the fact that they had a reliable offense and a below average reliable defense. They were one of only two teams in the NFL last year to average 24 or more points per game on offense and allow 24 or more points per game on defense. The only other team in the NFL to do that last year was the Chargers, the LA Chargers, 27.9 on offense, 27.0 given up on defense. Those were the only two teams last year in the NFL that averaged more than 24 on both offense and defense. And that's what we look for when we're betting an over. A team that we can rely on to get us 24 points a game, but also has a little bit of a suspect defense that's going to allow 24 or more points per game. That takes us to 48 points right off the bat. And we'll be looking at which teams will do exactly that in the 2022 upcoming season. Your best under teams from last year, and there were three of them, and we did very well with those teams. And that was the New York Giants, who went 5-11-1 over under, the Jacksonville Jaguars, 5-12 over under, and finally the Denver Broncos, also at 5-12 over under. And when I say 5-12, I'm saying that Denver had 5 games that went over the total, 12 games that went under the total. And again, this kind of makes sense because when we are looking at a team to bet on in terms of unders, we want to look at a team that A, has a very, very weak offense, a team that's going to average no more than less than 20 points a game, maybe 17 points per game. That was the case for all three of those teams last year. But we also want a team that has a decent defense as well. And that was also the case. The Giants allowed only 24 points last year. The Broncos allowed only 19 points per game last year. So there you have it there in terms of your top 3 under teams last year: Giants, Jaguars, and Denver Broncos. We'll see what happens in this upcoming season in terms of your over-unders. So that's our review from 2021. And before we say goodbye, we got a free play for week 1 in the NFL. And if you're a team totals guy like I am, this one looks really, really good. And we're going to be playing on the Baltimore Ravens in their game against the New York Jets. We're not going to play the game over-under. We're going to play a team over-under. And we look for Baltimore to cut loose on offense with Lamar Jackson and company in their very, very first game of the season. Their over-under line just for Baltimore is 26.0 points. We're playing Baltimore to go over that total of 26 points. The predicted or the implied score of this game, based on the spread and the over-under line, is Baltimore 25.75, New York 18.75. So Baltimore's team total is 26. Now listen to this. Over the last 4 seasons, the Ravens have averaged 42.7 points per game on their own in their first game of the year. That's amazing. 27 points last year in game 1, 38 points the year before that, 59 points the year before that, 47 the year before that. They've averaged 43 points per game in their first game of the season. That's the Ravens. And remember, they're going to be taking on a New York Jets defense that was dead last in the entire season in 2021, allowing 398 yards per game and 31 points per game. That's the Jets. The clincher, and it comes from our database, with Baltimore a significant road favorite in this game. They're now laying a touchdown in this game against the Jets. From our database, non-division, big road favorites of a touchdown or more, like Baltimore, have averaged 30.3 points per game on offense in the first half of the season. So for us, our free play is going to be a team total in week 1. It's going to be on Baltimore to go over their team total of 26 points. Now, with that said, totals tip sheet number 1, our first issue of the season, is out. It just came out. It's available on this website for just $11. Not only that, but we just finished Playbook football newsletter number 2. It's an all college issue. It's also available on the website for $12 as well. And if you like our publications, the best deal definitely is the triple play combination. You can get all 3 of our football newsletters for the full season for just $2.99. It's called our triple play combination. It's a fantastic deal. It's available at our Playbook store right here on this particular website. That's it for me. We'll try and include a few more totals tidbits down the road. And that's all for now from a totals perspective. We hope you have a great season. Have some fun. Don't bet on what you can't afford to lose. And then, of course, join us each week for Kings over under plays and keep fighting the good fight.